Now people are craving to live above 100. What does engineering a superhuman mean in a practical sense? And how is that different from the traditional methods?
It's a very important philosophy and approach to health, which is, can we engineer better health?
Dr. Mohamed Enayat is a London-trained general practitioner, TEDx speaker, and the founder of Human, a pioneering longevity clinic with a background in functional medicine, regenerative therapies, and aesthetic medicine. He has dedicated his career to redefining health through a holistic, data-driven approach.
Wherever you're at in your journey of health to disease, in a reactive model, you're constantly fighting fires within the population. Everyone's getting sicker to some degree. And now we're seeing that life expectancy is starting to drop, rising cancer, rising heart disease, prolonged state of being in morbidity. Great longevity medicine is the ability to improve someone's health in the short, medium, and long run. Alongside the BRCA gene, you need to be thinking about your detoxification of estrogen, whether you do that efficiently. So one of the genes that's associated with that, the COMT gene, is something that you might have a mutation in. That means that you don't recycle the estrogen metabolites as well, and that means that one of the metabolites that you produce increases breast cancer risk. Okay, that can be modified through diet and supplementation once you've identified that.
Dr. E, what a pleasure to have you on the Be That Life podcast.
Thank you, Mary. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm excited for our conversation.
I recently visited your clinic in South Kensington, Human. I must say that place is so impressive, and I've been to a lot of longevity clinics, but just walking in there, the vibe is so futuristic. I love it. So congratulations on building something so amazing.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really wanted to create a space that would allow people to step into the future, because ultimately they're going to be coming out of the place as a different version of themselves.
Yeah, amazing. What a great idea. That's exactly how I felt. I walked in there and I came out a completely different version of me. You know, I understood so much about, we did a really quick session on skin imaging and understanding. I've never seen my skin in the way that you guys showed me. So like, I got so happy from that experience. And actually, I'm looking forward to trying all these other things with you, other modalities in terms of engineering a superhuman. Now,
Yeah, and just on that, it's so important. You touched a point there, education.
yeah.
You know, just informing you as the person, how your skin is right now, how it behaves, how it grows, how it declines. And that's how we create personalized strategies for people. And that's how the empowerment delivers results, because it's the old methodology is you come to a doctor, they give you a prescription, then you take the pills.
Totally.
Right? There is no self-responsibility or coaching in that process. This process at Human is about empowering you with an understanding. That's what you've got to start with. Why is my health in this place? Why is my skin, for example, in this place? Then we go on to talking about the strategy. We attach data points to it. Then we create your personalized blueprint. And that is what delivers outcomes and results.
And the nice thing is that you don't spend just 15 minutes with your clients. You spend 40 minutes of a consultation. That I found really impressive. It wasn't just like, okay, here's your prescription. You have 15 minutes. You don't even want to understand you as a human and then get you out the door. But I learned so much just from that one experience that I'm truly grateful for. So thank you. Now, you speak a lot about engineering superhumans. Human is about engineering superhumans, right? Brian Johnson is at the forefront of really that space right now. And, the fact that he has really changed the trajectory on how we look at human health and longevity, that now people are craving to live above 100. And it's more than just, following the Blue Zones diet. And it's so much more than that, right? And we see it from Brian Johnson's perspective. So I want to dive deeper into really understanding from your perspective, what does engineering a superhuman mean in a practical sense? And how is that different from the traditional methods?
Okay. So engineering superhumans to us, it was a play on words, but it's a very important philosophy and approach to health, which is, can we engineer better health?
Yes, we can.
Wherever you're at in your journey of health to disease, whether you're stuck in a complicated health state where you've deteriorated, for example, as bad as cancer, or whether you're operating in your optimal health state and you're an elite athlete. In every scenario or any scenario, can you engineer a better state of health? And that's, for me, is engineering superhumans. Because ultimately, being superhuman, what does that mean? It means outperforming yourself, having some superhuman abilities, be it cognitive, etc., etc. So, with us, we start with, as we mentioned earlier, the discovery consultation, and then understanding what our patients' goals are and getting them to reimagine what they can be like with achieving those goals. What would they do with that extra cognitive focus, that extra energy, the improved resilience and mood? What would they do? Or stronger immunity? And that's how we then work with our patients to give them superhuman abilities that they haven't experienced with regards to their health. And we engineer that by understanding the biological processes that are involved to produce those states. What are the biological processes involved to produce improved cognitive capacity, for example, or improved energy, for example, or improved immune system, for example? Now, those biological processes are usually interrelated, right? So the human body is this complex biochemistry and electrophysiology that is interconnected. And so what ends up happening is that when you go down to improve that orchestra within, you find that you engineer, by engineering improvement in those biological processes and that orchestra, you, as an outcome, improve a lot of parameters of health on everyone's individual dashboard of health.
Brian Jones's protocol is expensive. And a lot of people look at that and feel like they can't afford that. How do you help people in all walks of life get to a level of superhuman health? Because, we want this to be accessible to everyone. We don't want to just be in a situation that it's only for the people who have money. Because we want to create impact, and real impact is changing the world. And that involves a lot of people that also don't have copious amounts of money. Now, there's been a lot of backlash with someone like Brian Johnson because they say only people like him can have those superhuman abilities. Do you disagree with that?
I do disagree with that, and I also agree with it to some degree. I think let's talk about what we can do and how. I'm going to talk about it me personally. I'm a UK trained doctor. I work in their National Health Service still, right? I value and appreciate free at point of care service and healthcare, which is when you go and receive healthcare, you don't get charged. Okay. And that's what the NHS provides. Now, that doesn't mean it's free. It means that it's just covered and paid for by the government or an insurance body, right? And that's covered through your tax pay. That's really important in terms of delivering healthcare so that the vast population can get access to health, even in complicated health states of disease. Many countries that's not available. If you have cancer, you're in America, you have a basic level of insurance if you're lucky, that will cover you to a basic level of care. There's a constant anxiety associated with racking up big, expensive hospital stays and treatments, right? And so we're lucky in the UK that we don't have that. Having said that, that should not stop us from innovating, right? And we have to appreciate that system, in that system, is hard to drive innovations in. It's built for big public health. It will take longer to get innovations into the healthcare. And the healthcare innovations that they do adopt are focused around disease modification rather than engineering better health, okay? One is reactive, one is proactive, right? Because in a reactive model, you're constantly fighting fires within the population. We already have an aging population. Everyone's getting sicker to some degree. And now we're seeing that life expectancy is starting to drop. And so we've got to a point where the major fires that were killing us at a younger age, we've put out, but that's led to a whole host of other fires. Small bushfires in all different systems, rising cancer, rising heart disease, prolonged state of being in morbidity, which causes access issues, etc., etc. Which means that we cannot innovate in the proactive. We have to focus on the reactive consistently. Now, in the proactive world of proactive healthcare, we has to be focused around education and understanding to the vast population of what they can do themselves if they get early warning signs that their body's starting to deteriorate, or if they want to engineer better health. This is the starting point. And, we're completely focused on that, and we are trying in our small piece to do the best we can. The second piece is building evidence, medical evidence, that is undisputable to the traditional medical evidence adoption processes. I.e., how do we build an irrefutable body of evidence that this methodology of working in a personalized, prescriptive, precision way, i.e. deeper testing, using prescription supplements, using NAD+, using hyperbaric pre-disease state, will extend health and prevent the onset or delay the onset of chronic diseases, which are inevitable, because 90% of what we die from is inevitable, reproducible, predictable chronic disease. Everyone gets it. Heart disease. Everyone gets vessel disease. Everyone gets all of these conditions, right? Top 3 killers. Cancer as well as among that. So we need to produce that. Now, the old way of looking at this was through a public health model, which is, let's look at the vast population and do a retrospective analysis over the last 30 years and see what are the common factors that we can deduce. Oh, smoking seems to be a problem. People smoke, their life expectancy goes down. Okay, public health says don't smoke. Right. Then they used to say fat is bad. Then we went fat free. Then they worked out sugar is bad. Now we're going, diabetes, sugar free. So in that old way of approaching a proactive strategy, it was very based on retrospective analysis. So looking back over 30 years, what we need to move to is a prospective looking, using data to inform and understand in the real time what modifications do what and how that can be computationally built out over time. And that's where we're a very good intersection of time with the role of computational biology, AI, how that computing power can be used to say, we do these lifestyle interventions or supplementation or NAD+, or peptides. How does that fit into the multiple biological processes, and how will that computate into producing health or delaying the onset of disease in the future? So I think we're at a very interesting time. We just have to engage using technology to solve those problems, to prove that this works and it can be more cost effective than the traditional approaches of prescribing medicines and surgery.
Right, because it's only treating the symptom and not the root cause of the problem.
And remember, the cost to deliver care for people that are sick has a cost, right? And that's funded through insurance. So we need to do a health economic study to say this approach A versus approach B. We're getting there. I think as a wider population, we're still early, but the longevity community of physicians and clinics that are thinking in this way are conjoining, and we're trying to build that a body of data. And now we have the kind of acceleration of AI. We want to be applying that acceleration to these methodologies that we're applying to prove that this works, so we can accelerate the adoption of this into the education of doctors and into the system of delivering medicine. This is longevity medicine that we want to be delivering, and it needs to be an extension of how we deliver primary care, community care medicine. And if I as a doctor can learn how to do it, which I have done as a GP, took me a few years, then every doctor can learn how to do it. We just have to be educated in those protocols, understand it, understand what the tools are in terms of testing and interventions, how to prescribe it in protocols, and what outcomes we're looking to achieve. Now, we've seen 6,000 patients in our methodology of care since we started, and we're seeing consistent improvements in the way we're delivering our algorithms of care and getting better and better results by understanding how to apply these tools and personalize it to each patient in front of us. And so we're just a small clinic providing that, but in the space we're quite progressed in
so
doing
are
that.
you only focused on preventing and not actual treating a current issue?
Good question. No, we applied this. So when we started, it was very much wellness focused. It was about how to, and that's very much in the prevention of disease world. People aren't sick with disease, but as we become more and more confident and competent, we built out capacity to be able to also treat diseases using a personalized way. Be early diseases, less complicated, like type 2 diabetes, all the way through. Now we have oncologists in the team that we
Amazing.
integrate a personalized approach with. We're doing that. So we're looking full spectrum. We have cardiologists in the team, rheumatologists, and cancer doctors, as well as specialist functional
So are
medicine
you
doctors.
providing the full spectrum of the MRI testing?
We refer out, and we refer out for any diagnostics. We don't have any MRI machines and CT scanners in the clinic, but we refer out to partners for that if we need to. Yes, correct. Yeah. Now, structural organ imaging is one aspect. We're more focused on what's going on in your biological processes right now, and we deduce that from biomarkers. The biomarkers that we look at are across blood, urine, saliva, DNA, and stool. Okay, and we look in detail. Now, everyone doesn't need to have all of those, but we start with very deep, comprehensive blood work of about 150 biomarkers that looks across all of the important systems of health. Traditional medicine, you go to a doctor, you have a symptom, I have an energy problem. They will look at maybe 5 to 10 markers related to that. We don't work like that. We ask you a whole bunch of questions about all of your health, and we have one standardized foundational panel that we have worked out that is cost effective, high value for everyone, that has these 150
Amazing.
markers. So whether you're coming in for energy or coming in for fertility, you're getting the same baseline set of bloods
Amazing.
that covers hormones, immune system, inflammation, micronutrients, minerals, stress hormones included, methylation screening, full blood count, etc., inflammation markers, gut barrier panel markers, looking at your small intestinal wall, looking for any signs of a yeast overgrowth, and also bacterial overgrowth in the intestines and in the blood as well. So a whole host of markers that we do, and we deliver that through a program of care that's £299 a month, where
That's
you
nothing,
work with
yeah.
a
It's really
functional
good.
medicine doctor and a functional nutritionist trained within the human methodology, and you get twice a year bloods included within that. So it's very comprehensive, very supportive, because healthcare is a journey. Engineering someone's health is a journey. It's not a prescription.
Yeah.
Okay, and so building that support that is there for you throughout the year, and it's iterative, which means that we are constantly adapting the strategy. It's not one prescription. Okay, you, Mary, have high cholesterol, therefore I give you a prescription that you have to take for the rest of your life. You, Mary, now have high blood pressure. You need to take one tablet for the rest of your life. And if it doesn't control, we'll give you another tablet. And what I see in general practice, being an NHS doctor, is that that's not good enough. That's just not good enough. We are not treating each person as an individual as deeply as we can. We know that. We are fighting fires. I don't get enough time with my patients. I don't get enough time in general practice in an NHS setting to know them as a whole, and then to check in on the strategy that I'm putting, adapt it continually based off data points as subjectivity, how they're feeling, and other things that are going on in their life, to get to the best outcome. Whereas this methodology allows us to do that. We're iterating continually. Now, the other element of iteration that's so important in our biology is that it's very adaptive. So when we find a few imbalances, now from that set of bloods, of those 6,000 patients, there's never been one patient that we've said your bloods are normal. That is the difference between this type of approach, which is looking for imbalances and treating imbalances, as well as disease and
Because
dysfunction.
we all have inflammation. So at the end of the day,
we all have some leaky gut. We develop that over
correct.
time based
Candida
on our
as
environment. We have some
well.
hormonal imbalances, all of us to some degree. We can get candida, we can get bacterial overgrowth over time.
Heavy metals, so many.
4 in 10 people have methylation gene defects that they carry in from their parents,
Right.
which means they create high homocysteine that drives inflammation.
Right.
Up to 1 in 4 people have LPA, lipoprotein A, which is derived through ApoE gene that they might carry and inherit, which is a more aggressive type of cholesterol that we can carry, that if we're not measuring, we won't know, because that's resistant to statins. It only works with other types of either supplements, lifestyle, or medication, like Repatha, PCSK9 inhibitors. And so it's this detail that we find when we do the foundational bloods that allows us to then get the strategies and put the strategy in place and test according to the strategies, the hypothesis that we're working on with each time, see if it works for you. Because not everyone gets the same response from the same thing. So with them, we adapt as we
So
go
what
over
if
that period
somebody,
of time.
a patient comes to your clinic and has been on statins, high blood pressure, high cholesterol for years? What's the protocol?
Everyone is different. So, we need to look at their full other systems. We try to get to the root cause of why they have that. It could be their lifestyle. However, we sometimes get patients that are eating really well, exercising, doing everything right on paper, including stress modification, etc., aerobic exercise, the works, and still have a genetically manifested a high cardiovascular risk profile. And that could be the ApoE gene that they're carrying, manifesting and producing LPA, plus having a methylation gene defect, manifesting and having high homocysteine. If you have those two genes and you don't know that you're carrying them, you will be carrying significantly increased cardiovascular risk. When we say cardiovascular risk, we think about the heart. We're actually talking about vascular blood vessels. What do blood vessels do? They are your plumbing to supply all of your major organs. So associated with that, you will get increased risk of dementia. Okay? Increased risk of heart disease. Those are your two major organs, your brain and your heart, but also affecting your other organs, kidney function, etc., etc., etc. So they come secondary a bit later. So those are the blind spots that we're looking for based off the emerging knowledge and understanding from science and medicine in the field of longevity science. So we as a clinic, we're the longevity doctors. We're personalizing. What do doctors do? We personalize a strategy according to the data that we know have the expertise to interpret, both about you subjectively, how you live, but also on your biological data points.
Have you helped people get off statins?
Yes. Sometimes people are on statins and it's not bringing their cholesterol down.
Yeah, right.
Right? Because they've got LPA raised high and not statins work for ApoB. Yes, we have. Absolutely.
That's incredible. That's so nice to hear.
Absolutely. I mean, we're taking people off medications is one of our goals.
That's amazing.
Right? But we do it responsibly,
of course,
safely, and effectively. We integrate with the traditional medical providers, secondary care specialist providers to do so. And we make sure we do it responsibly and safely. And there is no one size fits all for true longevity. Yeah, to engineer someone's biological potential,
of course, it's very
it requires it to be personalized. And so to go back to your question, can it be done on the cheap? In my opinion, at this stage, it cannot be done unless you're very well already. If you're well and you haven't got disease,
and you just need to optimize,
then you can do things that fall into the biohacking field and the wellness field, which is modifying your nutrition, environment, mindset, stress modification, and movement. Those 4 things, plus or minus community purpose, mission, values, right? Those are the elements you can control in your environment, that if you're well, you can maintain your wellness for longer and get some uplift. However, if you're not well, and you're looking for true longevity strategies, you need to understand your personalized risk factors based on your genetics and where your orchestra is currently at.
I think it's just good to touch it in a point that, we're trying to target people in their 20s, just starting out their lives to understand human health and not to wait until you're 35, 40, 50 to develop disease and then do something about it. So the point of that is just Brian Johnson is trying to target everybody. He isn't just trying to be specific to a particular set of people who have money. He wants to make this readily available for everyone. There's a lot of things that he does which is for free, like great sleep, breathing better, having less air pollution, less heavy metals, about eating better. These are all inexpensive things. It's not even a matter that you have to get to a point where you need to do all the biomarkers, all those biohacking things to really get to the level of true health. So the point is, people can, if they wanted to, they just need to modify very small things in their lifestyle to get them to better health in your 30s. It's about compounding, right? Doing the small things today that will take you to better gut health in your 30s and 40s. For example, I contribute my incredible gut health to the fact that I've never drank caffeine my whole life. And I have always followed an amazing circadian rhythm. It means that I sleep when my body tells me I'm tired, and I wake up when I'm rested, and I don't wake up in an alarm clock. And because I'm not heavily caffeinated my whole life, it's always been really good there. I have really good my chronobiology. I understand gut intuition. I know certain things that bother me. I listen to the signals in my body. And I think because people are so heavily caffeinated, heavily stressed, always running on the go, extremely high cortisol levels, eating trashy food, coping on trashy food, coping on caffeine, they are unable to get better sleep, better concentration, better mood.
And one of the things that I say that I get asked this a lot, which is, what is the number one thing you would ask your patients to do, or you would advise people to do? I get asked by on podcasts and journalists, etc. And is something that you just touched upon there, is develop health consciousness. What do I mean by that?
Totally.
Develop a state awareness of yourself at any given point, right? Understand what you're like in the calmest state. Feel that, notice that, what your heart's doing, what your breathing's doing, what your thoughts are doing, and understand when you're moving away from that, and start to identify what things in your environment take you away from that. Because longevity, the best strategy to longevity is not revving your engine too much. When you have a vintage car, you only get vintage cars if they've not been overused when they were young and new, right? So ultimately, you want a vintage body. So to get a vintage body, you need to not over rev it. And if you are, bring it back from the over revving very quickly. What are the things that over rev it? Things you touched upon: stress, stimuli, external or internal, caffeine, drugs,
Right.
alcohol,
All of
etc.
these, yeah.
Those are all the things that will rev your biological engine, and you'll be expending and wasting some energy in doing so, right? And then you start to think of yourself as this power plant of energy production. You produce energy consistently from oxygen and from substrates such as micronutrients that you get through your food, supplements, or an efficient digestive tract. And if you have any of those missing, then you're not going to deliver those micronutrients. And if you have poor blood supply and not got good heart and pump and good vasculature, you're not going to deliver the oxygen. You're constantly creating energy at a cellular level, and you're constantly expending energy, right? For repair mechanisms of DNA, for thinking, for digestion, for immunity. So if you think of yourself in this constant balance, then identify what are the things that will push you, that will waste too much energy, and work on how to increase your energy production capability. When you do that, you'll start to notice that you have more life force,
Totally.
more vitality, and then you can start to be strategic. I have this event coming up. I want to make sure at that event that I have full concentration. I'm recording a podcast with Mary. It's an amazing podcast. I want to be on it. I want to give my full attention. Therefore, I made sure that I've slept well, created the sleep hygiene, had my good nutrition, did not over caffeinate, etc. Things that work for me. So this is the strategies that you apply once you've started to understand how your body responds to your environment, developing that state awareness, utilizing things like wearables, looking at your heart rate variability, looking at how much deep sleep you get, maybe a glucose monitor, identifying what takes you out, what drops your HRV, what spikes your blood sugar, what drops your deep sleep, right? When you start to identify things that you're doing day to day, you can start to pick those off one by one and start to understand how your vehicle responds to the environment within which you're driving it. And then with that information, you are already armed to be able to have a long-term health and get the body driving for you for the long term.
You spoke a lot about the different DNA profiles, and there is a lot of buzz going on now on the genetic engineering, the technology called CRISPR. What is CRISPR? Explain it to our listeners, and how is that helping enhance human abilities?
I'm not an expert in CRISPR technology. You've got to say that from the outset, but my understanding of it is that it's a form of gene editing. Okay, so
let's explain what that is for listeners. Gene editing.
gene editing is where you will take the DNA from the cell and then you will edit that DNA. Now that DNA, currently CRISPR is focused around genetically derived conditions that cause morbidity or death at a younger age, right? So those rare conditions, inherited conditions, and that's where it should start the focus on. And so the potential to be able to edit the DNA in that DNA sequence to not manifest in that disease is really powerful, because then you can potentially take that mutations or those poorly formed genes out, replace it with healthy, the correct healthy profile. And so when those cells replicate and form a human, that human doesn't have that condition that otherwise it would have had. So that's CRISPR currently, and it's being applied to kind of inherited conditions that cause disease. Eventually, could it be applied to the fine-tuning genes, which is where we get involved, that produce longevity, right? That's at the other end of life. Potentially towards, that's further down the line, but it's got to be focused on the ones that are reducing life right in the early years.
Okay, so I'm in my 40s, and of course I care about health. Of course I care about my skin health. Of course I care about my organ health. Of course I care about my breast health. All of these things I worry about, because there's just an influx of people, especially women in their younger years, developing breast cancer, not understanding that they may be predisposed to it because they have the BRCA1, BRCA2 gene, they have a family history of cancer. What should someone like me think about at this age when it comes to longevity? I'm healthy, or at least I think I'm healthy. Of course, the way I feel is very different from what you're going to see in your test results, right? Because, for example, our common friend Louis, who came to you and he felt fine, but then when his biomarkers came back, it's completely different from what he thought his life should be, his diet should be, his way of living should be. So we can feel one way, but still it takes a long time before disease creeps up and becomes a symptom.
And this is the element of optimization, engineering health.
Right.
So true great longevity medicine is the ability to improve someone's health in the short, medium, and long run.
Right.
And Lou is a perfect example of that high-performing athlete.
Exactly.
And we found the imbalances, we corrected him, he felt even better, and he's even more high-performing.
Yeah.
As well as pushing disease away in the long run.
Exactly.
Now, what should you think about at 40, Mary?
Pause with me for a moment and imagine if your home could actually heal you. What if your home could nourish you just like a supplement can? At AWA, every material, molecule, and vibration is selected to heal. Redox water, clean air, crystal energy, and biophilic design, all working together to reset your biology. You don't just live in AWA, you regenerate there. This is what it feels like to step inside a living supplement. Now let's go back to the episode and explore more ways to return to your natural state.
You should be thinking about a strategy that prevents the common things and understanding your personal blueprint on your journey to developing those things. Cardiometabolic disease, cancer risk. You mentioned breast, so you'll be thinking alongside the BRCA gene, you need to be thinking about your detoxification of estrogen, whether you do that efficiently. And some people have a gene that doesn't. So one of the genes that's associated with that, the COMT gene, is something that you might have a mutation in that means that you don't recycle the estrogen metabolites as well. And that means that one of the metabolites that you produce increases breast cancer risk. Okay,
Right.
That can be modified through diet and supplementation once you've identified that, using something like the Dutch test. You might have heard of that. Yeah.
Yes,
But
of course.
in combination of a good foundational blood test. So that's an example of where my thought process went to immediately when you wanted to know how to modify that cancer risk. Obviously, nutrition and supplements and other things you can be doing. Alongside that, therapies can be a really interesting approach as well. How can we support repair mechanisms that go on? These are behind the scenes activity that goes on innately within us to repair cancerous changes at a cellular level that may happen, or misfolded proteins that may happen when the DNA is turning into RNA and creating and coding for proteins. These are the some of the longevity mechanisms. This is where things like NAD plus might have a role. This is where hyperbaric oxygen therapy might have a role. Ozone therapy is very fascinating. Also, intravenous ozone therapy.
Okay, can you explain what's intravenous ozone therapy?
The IV ozone therapy is ozone is 3 particles of oxygen, O3. It's found in our ozone layer, and then it comes down as O2 into our atmosphere. What we breathe in our air. It's very unstable as O3, and that's why it comes down as O2. But you can generate ozone through an ozone generator. You put oxygen in, high energy combust, breaks up the particles, rejoin as O3. It's been found since the 1920s, that ozone can be used medically for health concerns. It has great antibacterial, antipathogenic, so against bacteria, parasites, and viruses properties. So it helps kill those, and we carry those to some degree from traveling to Bali and different parts of the world and their different diets. We can get low grade infections that we carry. You've heard of Lyme's, it's very common as well.
Right.
And so that's one benefit of doing that. The second benefit.
So is that preventing Lyme? Preventing you
Treating.
from getting it?
Treating.
Only treating. Can you prevent from getting it?
No, I mean that's more about building a resilient immune system.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. If you get and depending on your underlying immune state,
correct,
when you get a virus or any
how
pathogen
you can handle it,
you will handle it or not handle it very well, basically. And that's where inflammation comes in, and we'll come back to that in a second. Ozone is also very good when you inject that in someone's blood. You mix someone's blood with ozone and re-inject that. It separates into O2 and a single reactive oxygen species, ROS. That causes your body to create a surge and upregulate production of antioxidants. Things like superoxide dismutase and glutathione production increases. That's natural increase of all these antioxidants that fight oxidative stress, antioxidant. Oxidative stress we get from our environment day to day, which causes DNA changes, etc., and is a conditional environment for disease and inflammation to thrive in. Okay, so this is why antioxidants are good. So great thing to upregulate antioxidant production, and that fights against inflammation. If oxidative stress is a major driver of someone's inflammation.
So how often is someone doing this?
Second mechanism, I'll answer that in 1 second. The third mechanism, important mechanism, is that it's one of the few treatments that causes mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new mitochondria. There's very few treatments out there that help you create new mitochondria. The new currency, so we started talking in longevity medicine, we were talking about stem cell medicine a lot. Now we're talking more about, and we understand that, and the huge role for that, stem cells and exosomes we can talk about in a second. And then now we're going on to mitochondria. We know that the mitochondria also age. They stop replicating as well, right? So we want to create the environments where your mitochondria produce healthy, are replicating and are healthy. That's called mitochondrial biogenesis. Ozone is one of the few treatments that stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis. Why are mitochondria, healthy mitochondria, important? Goes back to what I was saying right at the beginning. The energy is the currency of life. Mitochondria are critical for production of healthy energy. That's where ATP is produced. We need all the substrates, we need good digestion, etc., etc. If you get that right, you will always produce good energy. Also, a lot of your mechanisms will have the energy to work well, because if you don't have energy, you stop doing some of the things that are important and you start focusing reactively on other things, and you lose the energy at a cellular level to focus on efficient cellular repair mechanisms, etc., which we know are direct causes of cancerous changes. So we're trying to work more and more upstream in if we're looking to prevent cancer and prevent the chronic diseases. So ozone I really, really like. How often do you do it? Everyone is different depending on their current health state.
If a great health.
Yeah, for someone like yourself who's in good health and maybe great health, but you feel great, I would say preventatively doing annually 6 sessions once a year.
6 sessions once a year.
Yeah, over a 2-week period. It also supports detoxification, and we'll be using some nutritional and supplements alongside that to support a blood systemic detox and reduction. So
that's
of
every year for someone that's considered healthy. They need to do at least 6 sessions.
Yeah.
And at what age do you start doing that?
If someone's that's healthy, I mean, it really depends. I mean, on case by case basis. But I think and a lot of the consensus in science is that we start aging and going beyond peak health after 28.
Wow.
Okay, that's when biological aging starts.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah, 28.
and that's where we go over the plateau and things start to slow down. We don't notice it until 5 to 7 years later, 35.
Right. Very true.
Right? That's when we notice 30, mid 30s usually if you're living quite a healthy life.
I started noticing it at 40 actually. When I hit
Yeah.
40, I started noticing the difference. Took a while. I think it also depends on your genetics profile.
Yeah, and how you've lived.
Culture, genetically, where your parents are from. All of these things, they matter. So
Absolutely, yeah.
I think from that aspect. But
How did you notice it? What were the things you noticed?
I noticed that I definitely struggle losing weight than I used to.
Metabolism.
Definitely metabolism issue. I don't sleep as good as I used to sleep.
That's known, so your deep sleep starts to decrease as
So
we get older.
I used to, like, I'm just a naturally great sleeper. You can put me anywhere and I can go to sleep. But I just noticed that it's no longer in the same level. I would have some time where like it's like straight, and other times where back then it was so much better. I definitely get a lot more tired than I did in my 30s, and for sure, that's what I noticed. And I think those are the top three for me that I really. But because I'm also in the health space, I'm extremely mindful on how to manage that.
For sure.
While other people, they're not.
But the key is you have to work harder.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely
You have to
working
be-
harder.
Yeah, you have to work harder to achieve the same outcomes.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? So you've got to be more stricter in your sleep routines.
Yeah, your
or stricter on your
diet,
toxic
everything.
exposure.
Oh my gosh,
when
totally.
you're drinking, when you're having, etc., etc. Not sleeping, partying, or whatever,
Yeah.
and the types of foods even you're eating. As we get older, we have to be stricter because our body's capacity to produce health needs more and more support. And that's where the therapies can really be helpful, right?
Yeah. So they really help you
course, yeah.
have better sleep and better energy and better brain clarity just by doing
Absolutely.
those 6 sessions a year.
For a period of time, yes. But,
right.
this is where it depends on your personal mix of, that's why the other tools are really, really important that we've curated as well. Getting the nutrients in your body, supporting those cellular processes, be it through supplements or IVs, we find very, very useful as well. Hyperbaric oxygen, doing that seasonally is also very, very beneficial for long-term health, but also short-term cognitive acuity, etc., etc. Each of these has a role to play to support an underlying biological process.
There's a lot of people with mental health issues, brain health issues.
Yeah.
It's massive in the space now. Globally, it's an issue. How do you tackle that and those challenges, and in the awareness space that you're creating for people? I know for a fact that I know so many people just in their 20s alone who are already developing a lot of the things that they shouldn't be developing at that age, because of they vape, they smoking, they drinking alcohol. They're not able to manage stress the same way you'd have like maybe a couple of decades ago, where people lived so differently, right? It's the constant hit of dopamine through our social media. A lot of people are feeling disconnected in a very connected world. So how are you tackling brain health at your clinic?
The root cause is really important to understand, right? And you're right, we're in a bit of an epidemic of ADHD.
Yeah,
Let's just call it that.
it is
But
that.
also anxiety, and also mood disorders, and also loss of resilience. And I think you're right. We are biological organisms. We adapt to our environment. What we consume through our eyes, ears, mouth, and what environment we put ourselves in, we adapt to. So what's happened in the last 15 years? There's an adaptation that we've all undergone through exposure of what we're consuming through our eyes. What is that? We spend half our day looking at our phones, consuming, and it's training our brain.
Yeah.
Right? It's training our brain to become shorter attention span. Now, if that's happening, that is already becoming restless. We're trained biologically, the way we're thinking, to become more restless because we can't be still as well. And in doing so, that is a predication for anxiety. Getting those moments of feeling restless, agitated, And also, because every time you're doing that, you're using energy, cortisol is being released, your adrenal glands being affected, your thyroid glands are being affected. Eventually, you deplete that, then you start to crash, burnout, loss of resilience, poor decision making, agitation, losing your temper, not being yourself. Okay? And you start to change. You feel like you're going through a change and you're losing control of that process. So we've got to go back. So when that's happening, what do you need to do? We need to flex the other muscle. If we're subconsciously flexing that muscle of short attention span by watching these 15-second videos all day long, not all day, a couple hours, even an hour.
A lot of people, by the way, all day.
Right. And some people, like I maybe spend 25, 30 minutes a day, but still I'm conditioning my brain during that time. If I'm doing 25, 30 minutes on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, then we have to do 25, 30 minutes on the other side. Practicing being still, emptying your mind. Practice thought control. Understand that your brain generates lots of thoughts. You have to learn how to practice, work hard continually to empty your thoughts. And you do that through meditation, mindfulness, breath work, yoga, nature. Keep trying different things and make sure that works for you. And so just think of your muscles. What you flex will become stronger. And learn to kind of put your devices away, screen time locks, all of those things that you need to do, because the environment is becoming increasingly difficult for us to manage biologically, right? All of these stimuli, the expectations on us in the Western world or developed world, where we have access to technology, and now that technology has been deployed for productivity, we're expected to be way more productive than we've ever been. Answering WhatsApps, messages, emails, phone calls, your social media app notifications. We're constantly expected to be on. That's not normal.
That's not normal.
That's in the last 20-year innovation, less 10-year innovation. And that is what's driving this epidemic of first set of symptoms is restlessness, ADHD, second set of symptoms, anxiety, burnout, dysregulating immune response, inflammation will come as the third set of symptoms. Fourth set will be major disease, cancer, and other inflammation related disease, autoimmunity. Okay, so this is what we are dealing with and we're seeing this in general practice.
But when people come to you and you want to optimize brain health, what's the strategy?
Okay, so obviously state control, understanding, thought control, etc. We do the testing, understand if there's any hormonal implication, if there's blood sugar, etc., blood vessel health, making sure we're delivering nutrients across to the organ. Then we can utilize other therapies like NAD+. It's great. It's a precursor for dopamine. It improves motivation. It's great for DNA repair mechanisms as well. The longevity fights against some of the
hallmarks of aging. A lot of people don't like the IV drips. They think it takes too long.
It does take a bit of time.
So what's the alternative to an IV drip?
We offer subcutaneous because we think that's the fastest absorption into the bloodstream.
What's that?
Subcutaneous injections.
Got it.
Alternate day injections of about 50 milligrams of NAD.
Got it.
Just via subcutaneous. That's the alternative. Or you can do a 500 milligrams loading IV. You're there for a couple hours. So that's really good for brain health. We're seeing improvement in anxiety, motivation. Sleep is also improving for people as well. And then the other thing that we're doing at the moment is something called cerebrolysin. It's a brain peptide. Cerebro means brain, lysine means breakdown. And it's been shown to be very effective in the breakdown of amyloid plaque that develops associated with
Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's, and also in Parkinson's. So early trials have shown that it's effective in the early development of that, but it's also used in the longevity community by doctors preventatively, and is shown to have cognitive acuity enhancements when you're using it at smaller doses, and you do that a couple of times a year. Hyperbaric is also good when we do someone with NAD, we put them in the oxygen chamber, we're seeing good results. That combination of the two, NAD being a substrate to work through the mitochondria, oxygen the other substrate, high pressure improving the blood supply, so delivery to all of the organs including the brain, really powerful effect cognitively. So those are the main things that come to the top of my brain instantly. Yeah.
What are your tips for someone who really wants to stay youthful? because, there's this
How
peptides and
are you
exosomes and stem cell treatments, and I've done them all. Trust me, I've been through a range of different things, and I do it because I also want to try. It's a great way to create awareness, because if you don't try, you don't know. And I'm all about staying youthful, and I'm all about wanting to age gracefully, like many women, if not all women out there. And that's why it's one of the most
Yeah.
massive industries, right?
Yeah.
Beauty. So from a clinic like yours that's really focused also on internal health,
Absolutely.
how are you helping your clients retain vitality and youthfulness?
That's really through a real data-driven approach, right?
Yeah.
A data-driven approach that understands where you're currently at and how you've got here. That's good functional medicine. So the root cause of your current health state, that orchestra where it's currently at, and then applying a proactive longer-term strategy, which is, okay, we need to fight for you these hallmarks of aging because they're manifesting in these ways.
Right.
Those hallmarks of aging, 9 hallmarks
So
of
it
aging.
has to be the test. You have to do the test first.
Absolutely.
I tell this to patients all the time, clients, people that I know, that you cannot have great health or even prescribe anything to anyone if you don't know what's going on inside.
Yeah.
So the first thing in every protocol should be go and take your blood test.
Yeah. And
understand.
that's right. And it's not just partly is get good data, and then partly is get good expertise.
Yes,
Because
of course.
if you got good
course.
data and you haven't got the expertise looking
Correct.
at it with the view that we're going to make a long-term strategy, they don't have that skill set and
Yeah.
understanding. They're just looking at their data from a disease base, and they're going to say everything's fine. Just carry on. And that's an example with Louis would be, we talked about it previously. He will say the same thing.
Yes.
And this is time and time again, we're seeing it. Patients are coming into us with a lot of testing, but their interpretation expertise they've had on those tests has not found for them the nuances that they need to be treated for good health in the short, medium, and long run. And they come to us with those tests sometimes, and we're explaining things differently, and that's our expertise. So good data and good expertise. And then you can make an informed prescriptive plan and strategy that encompasses medication, supplements, peptides, stem cells or exosomes, and bioidentical hormones. But you don't throw everything at the kitchen sink at once. You go bit by bit according to the data and using strategy. And so that's the best results, and that's the best way to deliver long-term health and value to patients. And then you sprinkle in on top the therapies that are used really as jetpacks to support different processes as and when required. But again, they're used strategically.
Is there any technology that you currently have at Human that you're providing, or like a protocol that not many clinics have that makes you different?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything we do is in combination. And that's because we really understand the deep science and deep medicine of this world. So, for example, we have a fantastic longevity protocol of therapies itself. We combine NAD while you're doing an IV NAD. You're also doing intermittent hyperoxic training on a device that you're just sitting there. It takes your oxygen as low as 80% in cycles. And in doing so, you have lots of adaptive changes that are supportive for longevity. You improve stroke volume from your heart, so your heart muscle gets stronger. Your blood pressure improves because it needs to deliver that sparse oxygen to your organs better. You draw on a different energy state, which is your fat stores more easily, because in low oxygen you still need to deliver energy. So you're looking for different energy sources. So your fat, your LDL composition, your bad LDL decreases as well. And so that's an example. We do that. Followed by that, we're not finished. We do 45 minutes in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber because we want to expand the biological adaptations that we've just put you from the stresses that we put you under. We flood your body with stem cells that you produce from your bone marrow from hyperbaric oxygen itself.
Amazing.
Okay, and that increases vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF, and other types of factors that promote angiogenesis, new blood vessel creation. So now you can start to see we're supporting energy production at a cellular level. We're doing hyperoxic training to improve the organs and metabolism, how you create energy and draw on your fat and sugar stores, and then also followed by healing, enhancing regeneration and healing with this stack. One of my favorite stacks that I've put together. That's an example of one of the protocols that we put together. But at Human, that's what you get. A combination of all these different protocols that we've created based off a really strong understanding of science and medicine, and applying these types of therapies. You just don't get that in wellness labs or in other places that just biotechnology. They're not doctors. They're not applying it in a personalized way to patients. And they just say, okay, do hyperbaric because it's good for you. And you're not going to get that. That has a role in wellness. But it doesn't have a role if you're looking for prescriptive, medical, high, superior results.
Do you prescribe Ozempic and Mounjaro?
Sometimes, yeah. It's one of our tools.
So
Very rarely.
So can you explain to me
An example today.
why?
I had a patient today.
Tell me.
The patient today is someone that's had a non-STEMI, so a non-ST elevation MI in the past, is in his mid-50s. He's overweight. He's on after the heart attack in his 20s. In 2020, not in his 20s. He's been on standard therapy, so statin, blood pressure medication, bisoprolol, and a few different meds, and he's on diabetes meds, metformin, and another type of medication. He's someone I discussed to have. I think maybe we should do a GLP-1 for a microdose for a period of time. Let's get your insulin resistance down. Another marker that's not often tested: fasting insulin. Right. Test your fasting insulin.
Yeah.
It's overlooked.
Your HSCRP. Yes?
No, your fasting insulin.
So HSCRP is the high sensitive C-reactive protein.
That's different. So your fasting insulin level is often not tested. Your fasting glucose level is not often tested. So I would test that when you're looking at your glycemic control. So with him, we said, okay, cool. I think that if you could be a good candidate. I want to reduce your adipose tissue. I need to help you as a jetpack, but it's not the only thing. We also talked about supplementation, exercise need, etc., 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 and other types of supplements that he needed alongside that. But that's an example. But we use it very rarely, to be honest.
Yeah.
A lot of my patients don't come to us for just Mounjaro. Weight loss is our common goal, but when we're discussing and see their blood work, we're finding all these other different things that contribute to their weight loss and their slowing metabolism that we can work on before going on to a drug that, if you stop, you will get a relapse, most likely, of your weight gain. And so and the associated downsides of the Ozempic face aesthetically is very common. You can see it in a lot of people.
What is it?
Loss of the buccal fat pad. They get this kind of wasting in the gaunt look. They get loss of bone density. They get loss of muscle mass, and it's sad. Nowadays you can go out and you can just see it around you.
It's been abused, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I really wanted to understand your thoughts. It's just been so much negative press around Ozempic and Mounjaro. People are dying. People are,
there's been
really
a lot of
suffering.
Well, there's been a lot of positive press, and that's what's got it out there so much, right? But the nice thing about it is that it's fairly safe in the short term, but very dangerous in the long run,
term.
Right? And that's why it's got some positive press. Why is it very dangerous in the long term? Mainly because it changes your behavioral habits in relationship with yourself, the way you engage with nutrition in a healthy way, and you're giving up your power, right? As a patient, you're giving up your power to this magic pen that you need, that if you don't have, you're going to try and get it, and that's the biggest problem here, is the loss of power. You can use it as a tool for a shorter period of time or microdose alongside a more holistic strategy, and it can be used well. How often have I prescribed in my patients? I would say less than 1% of my patients.
Right.
Less than 1%.
Okay, that's good.
Very low. Do I use other peptides? Yes. So we also use things like CJC ipamorelin, tesmorelin, that support growth hormone releasing hormone peptides. I believe in a group of 7 or 8 peptides that are well studied, that are safe, but you can't use them forever. You've got to use them prescriptively, strategically with your patients, also checking their blood work as you're going along. And that's what delivers the superior results. And so GLP-1 is a form of peptides, and I think, but these are the 7 or 8 that we're currently looking at and using, and we're seeing very, very good results with. And that's based off a body of evidence that's being collected by longevity doctors like ourselves around the world.
If there's just one protocol that you can recommend to someone that just wants to start their journey into better health, what's that one protocol? What's that one technology? Is it a wearable? Is it just coming to your clinic and doing a blood test? What is just that one thing that can really change the way they look at their health?
I think I really like that. I think I think understanding yourself through wearable, a
Yeah,
good wearable,
wearable.
looking. I think for me, when I reflect on my journey, I started using wearables as soon as they were available. Maybe 10, 7, 8,
Oh
9
wow,
years
you
ago.
really,
Long time, yeah, because
yeah,
that's I've always been fascinated
yeah,
in,
it's true.
you know,
The data.
in biology, and then I think for me that was a big step. Actually, is okay. Wow, like my sleep is dropping. How do I improve my deep sleep? I know I want to get 2.5 hours deep sleep a day. I know my REM needs to be like this because that's what's going to give me longevity. Because in my deep sleep, that's when I regenerate the most, produce T cells, produce stem cells from my bone marrow, fight inflammation in deep sleep only. And HRV is another marker I
Yeah.
really like for long-term health, heart rate
Mm,
variability, because the higher that is, the better relative to each person. Don't be fixated on a number. You want to see it trend upwards. What things improve that? Stress, modification, toxin exposure, alcohol drops it, how you're sleeping, how you're recovering, mindset, and then also types of exercise. So low intensity, steady state exercise a few times a week. So aerobic exercise, but we're light jog, or also known as zone 2 training. You'll do that a few times a week, and then a couple of times a week you need to break a sweat. Okay, that will also improve your so that's HIIT exercises, sprinting, etc., etc. Those will improve your HRV. And finally, for longevity, doesn't really reflect in your HRV is your strength exercises. That's really
yeah.
important. And
Have you tried the
understanding
dynamometer?
the
It's
grip
the
strength.
grip strength.
I haven't tried that. No, I need to
It's
do that.
incredible because I actually brought it with me when I was speaking at an event in Dubai, and I took it on stage and I just showed it to people, and they were like amazed. They never seen anything
Mm.
like that, and they didn't even understand that grip strength has a lot to do with how long you're going to live. So it's a
And
great biomarker for longevity.
right, and what is it showing really? Why strength is an important
Yeah.
marker for longevity. Yeah, so it reflects how much total muscle mass you have,
Mm,
in some degree, and your functional muscle mass.
yeah.
There's no
Functional.
point being a bulked up on
Yeah.
steroids, taking Anavar, which we see people doing, if it's not functional strength,
Right.
right? Your functional strength comes from your core muscles, your abs, your flanks, your hamstrings, your quads, and your calves, right? And your upper back and shoulders. And that's where your core strength should be focused. The longer muscles, the more store more mitochondria. So the longer, bigger muscles, your hamstrings, your quads. If you bulk them up by doing squats, deadlifts, etc., you will find that your mitochondrial volume increases. As that density and concentration of mitochondria increases, that's a precursor for longevity as well. That's why your proximal muscle strength is a direct marker correlated to longevity as well.
Yes.
And that's alongside your grip strength as well. So I like that, the dynamometer.
Yeah, you should totally get one and
I
just check
will.
your grip strength and tell me about it.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you so much. That was such an interesting, very insightful conversation. We're going to end it now with just one last question I want to ask you is what is the future of the human longevity clinic and, engineering superhumans? What's the future going to look like for you?
The journey is long,
Yeah, it's
right?
long.
So, as a business owner, entrepreneur, kind of forced into a position of starting this business because I could not be a doctor that could practice this anywhere else.
Right.
I couldn't find a clinic that would do that would do hyperbaric medicine, that
That's
would
quite interesting.
that would do IV therapies, that would utilize this. That So it's 10 years ago I had to start working on that, right?
Right.
And so what is the future? I as a business owner, sometimes you push water uphill and you work really hard and you want to make the future happen sooner. For me, I'm applying principles of longevity to my business, which is the journey is long. Let's do it in a healthy, responsible, safe, caring,
Totally.
and effective way. And let's do it so that let's not worry about rapid growth and trying to capitalize on this longevity trend.
Correct. Yeah.
Let's just be in our lane, do things for each of our humans that we touch base with safely, effectively, responsively, and in a caring way, so we can give the best selves of our team to our patients. And how do we broaden those patients? They're not just patients that are are coming to us with a problem, but like you said earlier, how do we get the impact and those ripples to turn out?
Totally.
So we've already started doing that. We're doing community events with academies such as the Rising Stars Tennis Academy, which does tennis for underprivileged kids and disabled children in parts of inner outer London and inner outer London urban areas where there's disparities in health and based on economics, etc. And it's been great. We're educating younger children there about how to engage with their nutrition, their mindset, giving them hope, understanding, and tools. And we're doing that within utilizing sports. And this is why I work with a lot of athletes, because I enjoy utilizing them as a vehicle to make this type of knowledge more accessible. Because all kids look up to sports people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
very common.
Very common, true.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. E. I really appreciate it, and looking forward to seeing your journey and also being a part of that community.